request video before I go to work. This one's from Donna Niemi. I was wondering if you had the chance to check out those TED Talks on modern day slavery yet? Could you do another video on the same subject with the new information? Thanks. Yeah, I did a request video what I think about modern day slavery, and the person didn't like it. They said I should watch these TED Talks first. So I watched a TED Talks about some lady who goes and documents modern day slavery, and there's two of them, and I think I saw both of them, but she said it was the same exact presentation both times. She said the same thing, but yeah, there's a lady, can't remember her name, but just type modern day slavery TED Talks, and she travels around and takes pictures and tells stories of modern day slaves, mainly in countries like Africa, where they'd have these dudes go down in these mines and work for, like they go in the mine and stay down there for like 30 hours or something, and then they'd come up and sleep for 6 hours and go back in, and she showed pictures of them, and they're totally buff dudes, like bodybuilders, because they're lifting huge stones and stuff all day long. But then she had a picture of another guy, and it was like a couple. He's a guy who'd been there for like 5 years, and his nipples had like white frost on them because I guess he got like arsenic poisoning or something, some kind of poisoning from the mine, which made him like really skinny, like totally anorexic, like 90 pounds. So she's like, yeah, all these muscle guys are going to turn into like 90-pound anorexics and die in a couple of years from all the poisoning. And then there was, oh man, I should have done the video. I should have done this video right after watching the video, because she mentioned just the various countries. I think China. There was one in Asian. They were doing it in Asia too, where they get little kids, like 9-year-olds, to go and do like they had a whole family doing mixing dyes for T-shirts or something, and having to work all day long, and their parents would sell them into slavery, and yeah, it's actual slavery. They don't get paid at all, and they have to work for like 20-30 hours straight. It's kind of interesting because Donna gave me this video request around the same time where I was listening to Karl Marx Capital book, Das Kapital. And it's a huge book. It's like 10 times bigger than the fucking Bible. It's ridiculously big, and I only made it like 2/3 of the way through until I kind of gave up on it. I guess I'll hit it again. I can remember the basic place where I left off. But around the middle of the book, he's talking about labor conditions, and it's actually what the woman in TED Talks was talking about was the same exact thing as Karl Marx was talking about. This stuff was going on in Europe in the 1830s. They had the big European revolutions all over Europe, where they had to change up the rules to give laborers more rights. This is during the Industrial Revolution, the revolutions of 1840, I think it was. So in the 1830s, when it was really bad, and this is when Karl Marx was like, a young man. Yeah, dude, they'd have like actual instances, and he was just calling up specific instances. But like there was one of a 6-year-old kid who was working like 24 hours a day. Ones where like a 9-year-old kid had to work from like 5 in the morning until all day, and then wouldn't get off until like 3 o'clock, like 2 days later or something, you know what I mean? Like they'd work like 30 hours straight, more than 24 hours straight. And then little kids they'd work, in these like textile mills and sawmills and stuff. Most of the hard labor they were doing was in mills in Europe, and where there's dust flying all over the place, and they weren't giving them masks to wear, and then they'd have to wear their own masks, and it's like over 100 degrees in there, and Yeah, for like 6 weeks straight, these people would work with like 6 hours of sleep average a night. And yeah, in one instance, I remember they gave them 1 hour of sleep. They had to get up at 5 in the morning. They'd work until midnight, and then they have to get up at 1, and then they had to work until like 8 o'clock the next day. Like basically working people to death. And the life expectancy went down as well. In some of these like industrial towns in Europe or in England, the life expectancy was 26 years old. And then people were also getting really unhealthy, like developing all kinds of weird like physical problems, like their skin would start to get gray and flake off, and they'd get really skinny. And so doctors would write like try to write reasons for it, saying that we actually need the sun, and the sun makes your skin hard and makes it durable, because people's skins were getting really soft and tearing and stuff, and people were just getting really sick, and they were getting really little. They had to reduce the height requirement for soldiers in Germany. In 1780, the height requirement for a soldier was 178, which is 5'10", which is average for like a modern day man. That's how tall I am. And I didn't know that. I mean, the minimum for a soldier now is way less than 5'10". So does that mean people were taller back in the 1700s before the Industrial Revolution than they are now? Or did they just not need that many soldiers in Germany, and so they could just get the big guys? But 5'10", my God. But then back in like 1830, for the same country, I think it was Prussia, this is where Marx was from, the height requirement was 5'1". So does that mean people went down like 9 inches? So yeah, people got really little. Full-grown, laboring men were like 5'1" and like less than 100 pounds, and dying off. And then of course they had those revolutions, and we made all the labor laws with anti-child work, and the full-time and overtime pay, and all this kind of stuff. But so I think the point that what I took away from that, and again, it was kind of interesting that I was like exposed to modern day slavery and the slavery from the Industrial Revolution at the same time to compare it. But it kind of gave me the realization that the attitude that we should have for these countries, these really primitive countries, countries in Africa where they have all this modern day slavery, we should kind of look at it as more as just a bizarre phenomenon that happens with the human psychology. When a country gets to a stage where it needs workers, and before the industrial revolution of a country, people worked all the time. You'd be like, yeah, you work all the time, and so they'd work in the fields, and they'd work at their own pace, and they'd all work together as families, and so the kids would work because the kids wanted to work and help out, and it'd keep them busy, keep them from getting in trouble. So then they would just take that same mentality into the factory, and it's different. Because working and having fun out in the field is totally different than being in some stinky, like, polluted factory and making kids work. And so, I think if people can cast their eye away from something, or if they're not forced to do the right thing or think about the right thing, then they just don't. Like, people are just kind of lazy. And these slaves, they can't stand up for themselves because they're kids. They're like 6, 9, 11 years old, and that's all they've known. And so they just keep working, and they think that's, and then they're not happy. And then they grow up, and then they cause people to they get in like a supervisory position, and then they just make the new underlings under them work just like they did, because they did. And it's kind of I guess causes this weird spiral that just doesn't get fixed until there's actual people from who know that life doesn't have to be like that come in and actually stop it, put a stop to it. So anyways, yeah, the main thing that I got from that was that it's just a natural, bizarre phenomenon, and it's not something that people should use to, be racist against these countries, or just kind of, because there's a lot of racism still in America and Europe and against black people and brown people, and I think a lot of that racism is like, well, look where they come from. They come from Africa, and look how bad it is in Africa. So we don't want to have them to bring their Africa here. But it's not that simple. It's more because they were doing the same thing in Europe. It's just that technologically these countries, like in Africa, where they have most of that slavery, and in Asia, are just getting into their industrial revolution, and so they're kind of going through the same stages now as we did 150 years ago. And so you just need people to bring attention to it, and talk about it and expose it, and tell the people let the people who are involved in that know that it doesn't have to be that way, and that you can make laws, and people can, there's enough to go around for everybody. And it used to be like that in Europe, and try to fix it that way. But yeah, I think one good way to fix it, is like what this lady's doing, exposing it, just talk about it. Cause she said she went there, and she said she started to like tear up because she was in some pit in India where they were working, hauling huge stones over their heads all day long, and it was 130 degrees or something like that, and it was so hot that her camera broke. And she's like, if my camera broke and these people are still working. But she said she started to tear up in one of these places, and the guide said, no, don't do that, because then they'll know that you're a spy, that you're here just to, and you're going to spread the word about the slavery, and you can be in danger, So yeah, the people involved in that kind of stuff definitely, who make money off of it, and like for some reason have lost their souls and don't care, don't want you to talk about it. But I think the best way to fix countries that are behind is to talk about it, And even if it pisses them off, it pisses them off, But you gotta talk about this stuff. Like, if I were to go to some country and hear about, there's slavery going on in some mine or whatever, and then you can go and you can look at it, I'd go up and I'd film it, and then I'd do a video about it, and I'd talk about it. And if the people from that country want to get all, pissed off, and they're kind of hurting themselves it's kind of like they're defending that. And people do get upset in these little countries that, like, because I have videos where I talk about what I think about countries that I've been through, and I'm honest, and I say, like, I passed through Serbia, and I said that I saw a lot of trash in Serbia because they have these piles of garbage all over the outskirts of the city, and even inside the city they've got like sunken ships, and then like other ships, and just plastic bottles piled up everywhere. And I mentioned that, and people get all pissed off, like, what? We're not dirty. You're dirty. You're dirtier than us. Oh. But, instead of getting all upset and pissed off at me for mentioning it, why don't you just go out there and pick up the bottles, Like, that's what we do in the more advanced countries. We have Earth Day here in America. One Earth Day, I went out and picked up like 8 big bags of garbage from the park. It's like, you can't, there's no excuses for having trash all over the place, because anybody can just pick it up. And at the end of the day, there's no real excuses either for having child slavery and modern day slavery. There's excuses. You could talk about, all the different reasons, but there's no excuse to like defend it and to try to keep it going. You always we need to always be trying to make the world a better place, and realize that the planet is one. It's kind of like one country. We're one race, the human race, and one country, planet Earth, and it's all these different states within the country, and so we're all citizens of the world before we're citizens of our country. So if you find out about slavery going on Rwanda or something, then spread the word. You don't have to be a Rwandese to talk about slavery in Rwanda. All you have to be is a human who knows how to talk, and then do it. And that's what's going to do it. I mean, if some tourist, some rich guy who gets money off of all this slavery in some country, like maybe, sends his kid to college in America, and then all his college friends here in America are like, oh, you're from that country with the child slavery. Yeah, I saw the TED Talk about that. I saw the pictures of the people with the arsenic poisoning. Yeah, what do your parents do? Oh yeah, my dad owns that mine shaft. That's how we got the money to send me here. Oh God, wow. Yeah, well, when I'm done with my college, I'll go back to my home country, and I'm going to become a lawyer, and I'm going to make laws against all that stuff and fix it. Oh, cool, and that's the beautiful, that would be a beautiful way to fix all that stuff. And that's a reason for us to keep the lines of communication open, instead of the guy from that country having to kind of be all secretive about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm from that country. How does your dad make money? Oh, it's like a secret. I don't know. Oh God, just be honest and just try to make stuff better. Like if I was the owner of one of these companies, I'd do all I could to make it better. And then, of course, there's the other, there's slavery, straight up slavery, which apparently still exists in these countries. I'm sure it's illegal in all these countries. They do have the laws against it, but they just don't enforce it because they don't care, And, but there's also modern day kind of borderline slavery, like those factory workers in Bangladesh. Remember that fire that happened like 8 months ago? Or there was a few fires actually. And people couldn't escape because they'd lock the people in after the fire started, and some people had to jump off the 3rd floor just to escape. And these people are making like $30 a month, just enough to survive. And they working like overtime, inside, in stinky, hot factories, and it's not fun. But, that said, Bangladesh is the size of Florida, and it has 180 million people. So maybe they should stop having so many damn babies. There's a way to fix it. So yeah, I mean, where does the blame lie? In modern day slavery, I mean, people sell their kids off to work in these mines and stuff. So part of the problem is the Catholics and the Pope saying that you can't have condoms, and the fundamentalist Christians who say you can't have abortions. I mean, if people don't know how to do birth control, then they'll have babies, and then if they can't pay for their babies, they'll sell their babies, and then they'll just put those babies to work. And then they'll grow up to become people who think that that's the way the world should be, and then they'll have more babies and put them to work. And we need to look at it holistically and at all the factors. I mean, overpopulation is one factor. If you have less workers to work these mines, then you would work them. You treat them with more respect because they'd be less disposable. And see, one problem with slavery is people are so disposable that it actually, in the end, it doesn't even become a matter of how productive they are. All it matters is if you're going to be able to keep them as slaves, so that you can keep them working. When we had the Civil War and we tore apart the southern United States and they went in there to rebuild it in the Reconstruction, they were looking at those slave plantations. This is what I read in Karl Marx's Capital book. They were looking at all the trenches that the slaves were building, and they had seen that the trenches and all of the farming lines that they would dig. were just dug with really simple tools, like little spades, when they easily could have, the plantation owner easily could have invested in larger hoes that horses pull, and like bigger shovels and stuff. They didn't, because he had enough slaves, and he could keep his slaves in line more by just making them work all day long. If his slaves didn't have to work as much, then they would. It's kind of like maybe he was afraid if you give them an inch, they'd take a mile, sort of a thing. And that's what this woman was mentioning in the TED Talk, is that these slaves were using really just simple, basic tools, and they were putting them to work with that when they didn't have to. They could have just invested in better tools, and then the people wouldn't have had to work as much. So we also need to change the way that we pay workers. We need to make it more of a by piece pay and less of a by the hour. We need to try to keep it as little by the hour as possible, because, and this is what, like, Noam Chomsky talks about this, and this is what I think Karl Marx, he actually got the idea, I think, from Karl Marx, talking about it, that if you pay people by the hour, then the people who work aren't just going to work like crap, and then the worker doesn't, the owner of the slave doesn't really all that concerned with how efficient the slave is working, because they just make them work longer, and it's just easier, But if you start paying people by the work, then the people will have more incentive to work better, to get the job done quicker, and then they can work less and be more productive, and it's more straightforward. People get paid for what they actually are worth, and so that's another thing that we should try to be doing. Talk about it, expose what's going on, make it work by piecemeal, try to use as much technology as possible. A lot of people, every time we invent new tools, there's always protests that happen, big protests that happen, because the workers think that those big tools are going to take their work away, and then the people who own the tools are going to sell the product for the same price, and then all the money is going to go to them, and they'll get even richer, and then the workers will be out of work. And this is, there was an example of this back in Roman times, where something happened and all the people revolted. They invented the, different, I can't remember what it was, pumps for the mines, and then Eli Whitney's cotton gin, and the Jacobite rebellions in the 1860s in America had to do with one of these things. And it just happens over and over again. Just 10 years ago, somebody invented a machine that shakes apple trees in Spain, and so all the apple pickers rebelled against that, and that we shouldn't be doing that. We need to use technology to its maximum extent, and then figure out from there how to make it fair, in its own way, like give loans to people who want to buy an apple shaker or something like that. But the people who go, oh no, keep the technology out of it, because it's not, the infinite pessimists, because one guy's going to have the monopoly over it, make all the money, and put everybody out of work. No, you have to be positive, optimistic, and use technology to its maximum potential. And because big machines don't care if they're working all day long. They're inanimate objects. They just work. They're designed to do that. Human beings are designed to be, self-aware, self-controlling, in charge of their own destiny, beings who have relationships and spare time to relax and all that kind of stuff. So it's not natural to treat a human being like a machine. So yeah, expose what's going on, use technology to its maximum potential, and pay people by their work, and not by just per the hour, if you and follow the law. You also got to follow the rules, in these countries. But exposing what's going on, I think if you go to a country and you see a bunch of stupid shenanigans going on, and you should talk about it, and if you're from that country and you hear somebody doing a video about your country and they mention the stupid shit that your country does, instead of getting pissed off at me, like I did a video about Guyana, and I mentioned this like drunken dude with a shotgun who didn't want to let us through the checkpoint to go through the jungle in Guyana for like a half hour, and was like pointing it at everybody and refusing to let us through and stuff. I just mentioned that, and somebody got all pissed off and was like, "I'm gonna drag your lily white body behind my truck till your skin peels off." I was like, and getting all pissed off at me and all this. It's like, dude, maybe you should next time you see a drunken dude pointing a shotgun at everybody, maybe you should just report him and then get him fired and bring your country up to a level of respectability. And and I mean, it's not my fault. You guys are a bunch of fuck ups. It's your fault. You fix it. I'm just a reporter. I'm just here talking how it is. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with modern day slavery. If you got a country like Bangladesh, there's a lot of these countries, that just abuse the poor people or persecute a certain religion. Then regular people need to talk about it. That information needs to get out there, and it needs to get exposed, and not just in a TED talk though, like in a regular YouTube videos with regular people, man. And then the people will just, if it gets exposed enough, people will just put an end to it. The people involved in it will put it into it because they'll just get embarrassed. I mean, if that's how slavery can happen with little kids. Is the kids don't say anything, they don't complain. The first line of defense is words, is you complain. Kids need to complain, people need to complain, and then people who see it need to complain and talk about it, and then the people will naturally just get embarrassed and stop doing it, and they'll start paying their workers wages, and there won't be as much wealth discrepancy, and they'll kind of see themselves more as a citizen of their country and try to have pride in their country rather than look at all the workers in their country as being slaves who work for them and get them rich so they can live in the big houses and buy the Ferraris and fly all over the world, and then identify with other rich people from other countries instead of people from their own country. Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot. The whole thing with modern day slavery also has to do with, class discrepancy and classism and racism and all that kind of stuff. We need to just look at those people like they're human beings, just like us, and that's also related to animals. Animals are human beings who can't talk. It's like one race, the animal race, and within that race you got the humans and the cats and the dogs, and the only difference between us and the animals is the animals can't talk, and so they can't defend themselves, but they still have feelings and aspirations and all that. So, if you can get through the day without kicking your cat, then you'll be a lot closer to being able to run a mine or a mill without having little kids working all day long and against their will. And these kids know that it was wrong. The lady over at the TED Talk she gave them candles to hold and took pictures of them, and they were complaining and they knew it was wrong, but just from their own intuition and just the fact that they weren't happy and stuff, but they need a voice. The first thing that needs to put an end to that is exposure. For some reason we don't know about it. It's not common knowledge. Our media doesn't really report on that so much, and it should more. Movies, Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio touched on it with digging for diamonds using little kids to do that, and then gets, the guys who are in the diamond business in England are getting really rich off of that. And so, a lot of people in the first world are involved in it as well. Like our clothing from Walmart comes from Bangladesh. These people who make 30 bucks a day. And but we just don't think about it, and we don't know. So, and it's not really our responsibility as far as these labor laws. It's the responsibility of the country that build that stuff. We just buy it, and but we can go that extra mile and kind of boycott certain factories that we know aren't following the rules of their own countries. And the more, at the end of the day, the more communication that's going on, the better. But it's interesting to know that there's still child, modern day slavery going on, where kids and people just working insane hours. I mean, I didn't even know it was possible for people to work that much. I mean, these people are badasses. They're super fit before their bodies deteriorate. Oh my God, they're strong. And there's so much you can do for the labor world. Like, I'm a labor worker. It's like college. It's a great opportunity to advance yourself in society, because a way better opportunity than, I think, in a very real way, than an actual job within the industry where you can go out. Because you can, if you have a labor job, you can listen to audiobooks and educate yourself, and then you'll be ready to do whatever you want. And so we should try to give MP3 players with audiobooks and of their choosing to all the different workers who only make 30 bucks a month in these third world countries, and give it in their head that it doesn't have to be monotonous, where they're not thinking or doing anything, but they could actually be communicating with each other and listening to their audiobooks. And we should make factories outside as well. When you're working under the sun, you can work all day long happily. That's how people did it for thousands of years, working all day long every day, because they were outside under the sun. You make a factory that's under the sun, or at least have a bubble dome where the sunlight gets in. It'll do wonders. It'll do wonders for the workers' morale and their happiness, and even productivity. And you could pay them by the job when they're using better technology, and they could be a lot more productive in a third of the time and a quarter of the time, and everybody would make their money, and the worker gets to go home. And so yeah, at the end of the day, it's just communication. Really, it's communication, which is what we need. Starting with exposing what's going on. But yes, watch the video. Sorry, I didn't remember all the details, but yeah, mainly mines and textile factories and pits and stuff. You got people working just. But it's interesting, because when I was listening to the Karl Marx's Capitalist book, the amount of work that the lady was mentioning in the TED Talk of who she saw, and the amount of work that Karl Marx was talking about in the book, it was about the same. It was like, yeah, people working 30 hours straight, and then they sleep for a couple hours, and then they're back at it, basically working until they collapse, like for 6 weeks on end, and then maybe they get a few days off because they just can't do it, and then they're back at it. And it's amazing how much work human beings can do. I mean, I didn't even know people could even physically work that much. It's insane. So, oh my God, yeah, but it's still happening now. It's too bad. So yeah, we need to expose it, and expose the people who are involved in it, and expose the people on our end and the first world who buy this shit. Expose them too. Exposure. So, okay, so that's that. Peace out.